Hi, all, and thank you for joining our session today. My name is Michael O'Connell, and I'm the VP of Marketing at AnyRoad. We're a technology platform that empowers brands and retailers to deliver in-store and online experiences such as classes, events, and appointment-based services. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jen Harness, Director of Content and Experience at the Michaels stores, and Natalie Brown, Head of Marketing at Sur La Table. We're going to talk about how brands use experiences to build long-term relationships with their customers. Jen, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your role in your company?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So for anyone not familiar with Michaels, Michaels is the largest arts and crafts retailer in North America. I am the Director of Content and Experience, which means that my teams really handle all of the experiential content, educational content online, in store, and as well as some of the DIY project stuff that you see come out of our company. So,
and Natalie, how about you introduce yourself and Sur La Table?
Thanks for having me today, Michael. So Sur La Table is a specialty kitchenware retailer. We sell everything from pots and pans to cookie cutters. But what sets us apart is we're also known for our cooking schools. So we have cooking schools within our store footprints that provide hands-on cooking classes. And we also now have a digital cooking school where you can take virtual classes with one of our amazing resident chefs.
In-house chefs in stores, that's definitely a new trend I'd love to see more of. And so why don't we jump into some of our questions? You know, we're going to start off by focusing on the in-store experience. And so actually double clicking on what you just said, Natalie, maybe you could talk about the types of experiences and services that you offer in store, and perhaps tell me which one might be your favorite.
Yeah, actually, so what we offer goes well beyond the classes. You know, we're known for the classes, as I said, but we have a lot of other services. It ranges everything from weekend demos. So we will have our chefs sometimes during key periods out on the floor doing in-store demos. We have tastings. We have a lot of our own mixes and delicious gourmet foods that we taste on a regular basis in the store. We do test drive events where we might have 3 different kinds of skillets, and you can come in and fry up some onions and see which one suits you the best before you buy it. We also have on-demand or scheduled services like knife sharpening. So bring those knives in and we'll put a nice edge in. And then we help people with product setups. So some of the products we sell, for example, the Euro coffee machine, it's a pretty complex piece of machinery. And it has a lot of presets and some really nifty things you can do to make at-home coffee. And we will gladly help you set the machine up so you have your presets done and you can take it home and be all ready to go. And I think for those, we're leveraging, as you mentioned, we have the in-store chefs, but we also have an amazing group of in-store talent, the team who know the cooking space and know the products really well. And we do leverage them to provide a full service so that we're more than just a place to buy things.
I think it's a destination for expertise and experience. I hear the very same thing about Michael's Store Associates. Maybe Jen, you could tell us about the types of experiences that you offer in store, and maybe even those ones that you offer online.
Yeah, so we also have demos in store, and we have make breaks every Sunday. So there's a consistent feed of in-store opportunities for all of the makers to come do. There's kids components, there's adult components. So no matter who you are, there's going to be something that satisfies what you're looking for. The other thing that we're working on is testing the relaunch of our in-store class program. So that has been a big undertaking in this kind of quiet period of in-store stuff that has been our last 2 years. And while that has been quiet in store, we have been building this online experience. It started in early 2020, and it has expanded from just a tiny little grouping of free classes to a pretty robust experience of online free, online paid, smaller class sizes, more curated content. And, it's just been a really nice complement to what we've been able to have in store. And I think especially now in kind of this environment of, needing to have some dynamic, flexible options for people, it has been a really great thing for our makers, because we've been able to reach them in all areas of their journey.
So I think is when you think about that kind of journey for makers, and we talk about these experiences as being very valuable to brands, maybe you could, Jen, you could just elaborate maybe on the goals that you have for the experiences that you run.
Yeah, sure. So as far as, our big overarching goals are, brand building and just customer satisfaction, being able to, I guess, influence and inspire the customer is a really big part. And I'm guessing Natalie has a similar story just because of the nature of what it is. I mean, art and crafts are a very like emotional thing, and so is cooking. Like cooking can be that exact same thing as arts and crafts for other people. And so, yes, there's revenue streams, and it's important for other businesses when you're thinking about this to think about your revenue streams, but don't think of it all as a revenue stream. You have to think of it as loyalty and brand awareness and community and just serving your customer, being a servant in some ways to them too. So those, I mean, that's probably all over the place, but like those are our big goals as far as like when we think of, is this achieving what we're looking for? Those are the things that we're doubling down on.
I think the community thing really came to light during the pandemic. We saw people flocking to these types of experiences because it allowed them to have these human connections with like-minded people and share these experiences. And, the byproduct of that, I suppose, was brand love. People got closer to your brands, got closer to your company, but they also had this wonderful community that kept them engaged, kept them interested throughout the difficult times of the pandemic. Natalie, maybe you could talk to us about how Sur La Table goes the classes and services and gives a sense of if there's anything different from how Michael's approaches it.
I mean, Jen, you summarized it perfectly. There are obviously revenue considerations. We do have classes that you pay for, but in the bigger picture, it really is about, I would rate customer satisfaction very highly, especially when you're spending top dollar on a nice new knife or buying some really fancy new cookware. Knowing how to use it properly or being able to bring it in to have it, learn how to care for it or have it serviced, like the knife sharpening, is very important. But then the community piece, we know we've got these great stories. So every time we have an anniversary and we speak to our customers and our fans on social, we know that people come to our classes, for example, and they might come to a cooking class on a first date and they fall in love in a Sur La Table cooking class. They might get engaged in the Sur La Table cooking class. And so people have these really visceral memories that go back to those, food and just emotions are tied together. So it ties together nicely, but then you bring your brand into it and suddenly Sur La Table becomes more than a place to buy stuff, but it's the place where you met. It's the place where you got engaged. It's the place where you make these memorable moments in cooking classes. So I think it's really a very big intangible component of an experience when people can connect your brand to their life. And if it's done purposefully and connects to your brand why, then it really becomes a secret sauce.
Yeah, I think it's those emotional connections that experiences allow, which is just so unique to other types of marketing and engagement. And I think that your story there perfectly captures that. And I can actually speak in personal experience. I bought these fancy Japanese global knives at Sur La Table, and I can't sharpen them, and they went dull. I had to go in store to get the expert support, and again, that just reinforces the loyalty that I already have for the brand. So it's nice to see the different kind of multifaceted ways that you look at how to goal these programs. And so thinking, maybe stepping away from goals is, I'd love to learn more about the origins and where the maybe the concept or the ideas came for the types of experiences that both of your brands run. Maybe Natalie, we could start with you. How did in-store classes and appointments come about at Sur La Table?
Classes actually started a very long time ago. We were founded in 1972 by Shirley Collins, and she ran Sur La Table as a single store here in Seattle for a long time. And then she eventually decided to step out and sell the business. And she sold it to a couple the Bankies, Renee Banky, happened to be a global traveler and global cook. And when they opened up the second store, they wanted to grow the chain. She had this idea of opening it up with a cooking school. And initially it was to teach global cooking. And over the years, we have now opened more stores with cooking schools in them. It's a really successful concept for us, obviously. And it's very key to our brand. It's what makes our brands, stand out in the space. And we still do teach global cooking, but it runs the gamut. We now run date nights. We have kids camp experiences. So it's really just growing. And I think for us, as we have more products that we bring in and there's more interest in different types of cooking, it just opens the doors for us to find new ways to activate around the idea of food and just different ways for people to interact with the product. So it went from cooking classes to what I mentioned, the skillet test drive. So we have a big cookware sale twice a year. We will set up a test drive station and you can come in and try the new skillets before you buy them at our big cookware sale. So it really has opened the door to those additional in-store experiences that I was talking about earlier.
Michael's has a similar, Michael started classes well before I worked for Michael's too. And it's one of those things that it's always been part of our DNA. I think a lot like Sur La Table. I think it's something that our customers do expect from us. And I think there's on some level, they expect us to be the expert and be able to teach them. And it lends itself well to both of our brands to have experiences be part of that. But I think as the world changes, as our customer changes, I think the service piece of that does change. And, for us, the evolution has been very interesting just in the few years that I have touched it. I mean, everything from being completely in-house to community classroom, which was almost completely out of house, to now having online in-store experiences versus classes. I mean, it's probably at its largest if you think about in terms of, breadth of offering. We're probably getting close to the most we've ever had to offer our customer. And I think that's part of the beauty of being able to grow the program is to be able to show something that is so successful in one area that it allows you to expand and meet other customers that maybe you didn't have the resources or bandwidth to meet before. But that has been, at least for us, our growth journey is just continuing to prove out, different areas of the experience and the education journey so that we can offer more and more and more.
Jen, the one thing you talked about was how big your program is. And that's the one thing I admire about Michael's. It's huge. I'm so curious about scale and how you scaled it and sort of how do you know how fast to go? And I'd love to learn more about how you evaluate the size and how you got to the scale you are.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ellie. The scale, I think it matters what you're doing. So for online, it scales very differently than in store. I mean, so yes, we're a big company, I think around 1,300 stores, and but that's also unique experiences for that customer. So there's things to be considered like brand consistency and offering that you have to look at those things differently if you're talking about an in-person experience versus online, where it's much closer to the controllable side, and you've got maybe one instructor that's teaching the masses, but both have their benefits. And we definitely have found that there are customers that want the flexibility and I guess smaller commitment of an online offering. And then there's customers who very much want that, tangible, I can touch it and do it, and I can have that community of the in-store program. So that also means that as you scale those, you have to consider what's important to that end customer. So yeah, great question. And I'm sure there's more details than we have time to even go over.
So actually one thing, which is a kind of a side question that I've picked up on, two things that you've just said, both of you, is that your partner suppliers play a role in the types of experience. So for example, as Michael's product lineup expands, there's more classes that you can teach, and the same goes for Sur La Table. Maybe Natalie, you can comment on how you work with how important are your brand partners or your supplier brand partners in the delivery of your experiences?
They're incredibly important. So on a number of areas. So the one is obviously when you come to take a cooking class from us, having an array of products that we sell in the cooking school. So when you take a class, you can try the different knives. You can try a global if you've never heard of it before, and we have those knives. So partnering with the different companies to make sure that we have the products in the cooking school, and that cooking class is also, it's a learning moment from a new recipe, but also from trying a new product, if that is your desire. And then the other opportunity, and a great example, is we launched an exclusive new color with Le Creuset last year, Azure Blue. And we did an incredible influencer event where they did a custom class for us, and it was on the day of the launch, and it debuted this new color. And this influencer, Justin Chappell, he's cooked in the new color for us. And it was, we were lucky because with the partnership, we were able to offer it up as a free event, and folks could get a sneak peek of the new color, but also learn some great cooking tips for cooking in cast iron. So I think it really opens the door to do some interesting partnerships as well. And then unique launch events and things that really are special to both brands to bring customers in, things you can't find anywhere else.
I think experiences create a wonderful opportunity to make that connection to different parts of the marketing organization. So like you mentioned, influencers, celebrity influencers, typically those could have been siloed in the social team or under a different budget, but experiences offer the opportunity to connect those different teams to work better together. So really, really cool. I'm going to just jump on to another question, which is kind of, what role do you think classes play in driving, or experiences play in driving traffic to stores, like actual foot traffic?
That's a great question. I'll jump in. I think they're very important, but I think it goes to something Jen touched on as well. It's what's important to your customers. So you really have to keep your finger on the pulse of what people are looking for and what they want, because ultimately it has to be worth the time spent. When you've got an online class experience as well in your offering, it has to be worth time spent getting into your car, driving in, finding parking, coming into the store. It's a longer experience and more commitment. Now, granted, it's that in person, and you can smell it and taste it and eat it. In my case, it's food, which you don't necessarily, online you are cooking along, but there is that in-person moment. But you have to make it worthwhile. But on the flip side, I think the benefits are innumerable, because you get that moment to interact with products, and the products are there to buy in the moment if you want them. So there's immediate gratification. And really, I think the in-person part helps cement that community. You're there with other people live in the moment, and it helps cement the brand loyalty as well. You get, if you have questions, you get to speak to the chef or to the other store associates in person. So it becomes a full 360 brand moment. And I think that's where the value is, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. As far as like the driving of traffic, I think it depends on what it is that you're doing, and it can be difficult to measure in some cases too. I think how we measure all kinds of things could be very much a point that we could go into for several minutes, I think. But anecdotally, I think at least for us, we know that it drives traffic just through sheer customer feedback. I mean, for example, around Christmas, to give our stores an opportunity to really make sure that it was product first and serving the customer, we kind of paused on some of our in-store experiences that up to that point had been very consistent. And we immediately heard outcry from the customers of, where's my make break? Where are my demos? And it actually made us pause and go like, are they so important that they're an integral part of what that customer experience needs to be, that we do leave them during peak times? I mean, it was a really great learning for us, but a very pointed, like, this is important to them. And yes, they know, and yes, they are coming for this event, or else they wouldn't have taken the time to bug you about why you didn't have it. So
isn't it funny how sometimes you learn the value of something when it's gone?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's a perfect segue into a question I have around the pandemic, right? We talk about the pandemic bringing the future forward for a lot of brands in terms of accelerating innovation, but I'd love to maybe get a sense of both of your experiences and with the pandemic and how that changed your kind of catalog and offering.
For us, it was absolutely game changer. Not unlike Sur La Table, Michael's stores closed, and the first thing to close was the classroom. The next thing to close was the store itself. So for us, it was a survival mode in a way, and it would almost be easier to tell you what didn't change about the program than to go through the list of what did change for us. But I can say that everything has its challenges, but partnering with AnyRoad was a critical piece to success in that we went heads down from the beginning and said, okay, how do we keep our business alive with no store and no virtual program? And they went to work on the tech and we went to work on the teachers and the marketing. And in 4 weeks, we came back together and launched our first series of classes. We partnered with vendors and we launched a little program that, I mean, who knew where we'd be now? We didn't certainly know where we'd be now. We just thought we were filling a gap. And those little meager 5 classes a week have turned into, a couple of dozen classes a week. And we have been now able to expand back into our stores, and we're offering the breadth that we never had before. So, complete game changer for Michael's.
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly for us, we had to mobilize and come up with the virtual equivalent of a class experience. Obviously, there's some things you have to solve for. Teaching a class virtually is very different to teaching in person. The chefs had to learn how to use the cameras, and we use a 2-camera system so we can still show a close-up and show you like the cutting skills. So getting people up to speed and comfortable with that. And then there are the technical things. The site was not set up to book virtual classes. It was set up to book in-person seats on specific dates at specific locations. So you had a lot of tech challenges you had to solve. And then I would add on to that, because I think the pandemic for us even had an enduring effect on the in-person classes. Obviously, it's food, and if you want to eat, people weren't allowed to take off masks, and restaurants were shut down, right? So even when retail opened, the cooking class experience was a very different experience, and we adjusted. We did things like we ran these classes that were sort of a make and take, where you'd come in and you'd make a big sheet pan lasagna, for example, and because you couldn't eat in the classroom, you'd take it home and with instructions on how to reheat it, and it was a twofold benefit, because at that point a lot of people were working from home and had extra time, and so they could come in, take the class, and then they went home. They managed to get out, have some time with other people, and dinner was made. And so I think for us, longer term, it also had some interesting learnings on the types of classes. And, Jane, you talk about holidays when things are different. So how do you take those learnings and then leverage it? Because we're not always going to live in the pandemic time, and you can take your mask off and eat in a classroom situation now. But having that inbuilt knowledge of what it took to run a make and take class, now that's a format that we can leverage at another point in time if we ever need to. So I think the other thing is, react, respond, but then also catalog and remember the things that worked and keep those ideas and be ready to pivot and reskin as things change and evolve over time.
Yeah, I could not agree more with the tool book that you just are referencing. Like that, it's a mental guide to, any number of hurdles that you can run into. And I do feel like in a way it accelerated some of what could take years to learn, in a normal environment. I think we were lucky in some sense that some of this was hurled at us, at rapid fire. And we did have to think on our feet almost every day. So yeah, very, very good point, Natalie.
Well, there's a saying I love to use, which is called pressure makes diamonds. So I think
Yes.
the pandemic forced us all to really rethink how we deliver value and how we support our customers. And I think by putting the customer first in both of your examples, I think it paid dividends for the brands. I think it's a perfect segue into thinking about the future, and maybe as well offering a kind of a final piece of tactical advice for the audience here. But what would you say your future goals for your experiential programs are? And do you see any new types of experiences potentially being offered? Now, I don't want you to give the game away, but can you hint at what the future looks like for both of your brands?
Sure. So I think, I kind of hinted a little bit with the learnings that we had during the pandemic. How do we take those learnings, crystallize them, and how does it inform our offerings? And not just the type of classes that we run, but also what are the other experiences that we can offer in store that are meaningful to the customer? So that we really are truly more the store experience is more than just the class, and so it grows on the things that we already offer. And I think in terms of advice to other retailers, if you're getting started, I think start small, but just get started. Test a lot. We do test things, and then whatever you do, try and align it with your brand purpose. But you can be creative. You don't have to be literally interpretive, where we teach, for example, we sell cooking stuff, we teach cooking classes, right? So an example I could offer is, if you're a furniture retailer, you don't need to bring in a decorator and do a decorating session. Maybe you do something on reupholstering. So you bring people in, they can learn a new skill. Maybe they do reupholster an existing piece they bought from you, but maybe they realize it's not what they want to do and they buy a new piece. So think about it in terms of adding value and where you can teach people new skills in a way that makes sense with why they like your brand, and building that loyalty and community, and always have that as a bigger North Star than just trying to sell something else to somebody.
Yeah, Natalie, you outlined many of what I had on my list too, as far as just, start. You've got to start. And I think there was a fortunate point of a little shove of the universe for some of us. And I think if, create that shove yourself. I can only give things through my own context, but take me, like take a person who is passionate, who's, somebody that you can put over this and empower them, remove their obstacles, and just tell them to go. Give them permission to go and test and play, and you will see it shine. I mean, that is the thing that has really been amazing to me is just, we gave ourselves permission to not have highly produced video. We gave ourselves permission to be seen in our homes. There's all these hurdles that you could have said, well, it's costly to do that. We don't have a team over that, or, we don't have these or those resources. But if you will remove those obstacles for yourself, and you will just say that you are going to start and make a small goal for yourself and just achieve that goal and reevaluate what you've learned. It's really just as simple as testing and learning and iterating based on those learnings.
I think the remarkable thing, what you just talked about, is like your talent, your people are key to making any program like this successful. And I think is for those that are concerned about quality and the overall branding of these types of experiences, I think authenticity actually trumps kind of highly produced branding. And what we saw during the pandemic was that post-experience NPS for things like Michael's classes was very, very close to the NPS, pre-pandemic of in-person. And so people appreciate that authenticity that you can bring with these types of experiences. You are connecting and personalizing the brand for your audience. So I love that advice to from both of you, to start small, to experiment, and then and think of it as a people strategy.
Right. The worst thing you can do is expect it to be perfect. Don't shoot for perfect at the beginning. Shoot for something that's completed. Complete it. Do one. And even if it is literally just one, do one, and you will learn from that, and you'll be able to continue doing that. We have so speaking of the tool book, the tool belt, like we took what we did in this virtual building world, and we applied it to things that were old hat for us. And talking about future goals, I can't say much more than just expect there to be a good change and a a meaningful change. We went back to programs that existed and addressed them and were more intentional with them and used these tools that we had learned over the last 2 years to then tweak those things. So think of it, you're not just testing this one thing, you're testing to learn things that you can then apply broadly to your business.
Great advice. And I loved what you said about people, about trusting your team and giving them, empowering them, and then giving them free rein to go out and dazzle. So awesome.
Well, Natalie, Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you again. Thanks for joining us for this session for Future Stores, and thank you to the audience for listening to us. We hope there were some really good takeaways for you from this conversation, and enjoy the rest of the programming and the event.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
Yes.
all.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, Jen. Nice to see you again. Bye.
You too.